drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That was absolutely beautiful. And there's some wonderful praise for you in the chat. And with that, greetings everyone to our membership program. For those of you who are just joining us and who weren't on the call previously, I just want to thank you for joining the African American Historical Society of Rockland County. We're very pleased to have you with us today, and we hope that you will enjoy this program. Before we begin, I wanted to just announce the names of the trustees of the African American Historical Society. And that's James Johnson, Dana Stilley, Holly Zuber Banks, Dr. Claude Brathwaite, the Honorable Tony Earl, Kenneth Jackson, Drusilla Kinzonzi, Willie Trotman, Margaret Tewitt, and our trustee emeritus, Dr. Arlene Clinkscale. Many of our trustees are here tonight, and I thank you for being here as well. And with that, Dr. Claude Brathwaite will bring our membership call to action.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out tonight to the meeting. The mission, again, in terms of what the AAHS is, I think James clearly stated that. But the 4 pillars that we have here of the membership: discovering Rockland's history, researching its pioneers, building the community, and sharing the knowledge. One of the things in terms of the membership is to increase the number of people we have coming in, both at the Board of Trustees level and also at the membership level for all of these roles in terms of what the mission stands for. We are extremely interested in following up and developing this digitalization of the work of the AAHS. That would mean people such as myself are considered old folks. And so we want to bring new blood into the AAHS. Young people, graduate students, even the not so old, the not so young, to help us share the knowledge. And that will be done with the digitalization of the work that is completed, that was completed by the AHS, but also future work, projects that would allow us to, in a massive way, have these collaborative tools that can spread the word. The researching of its pioneers too, heavy emphasis on digitalization and getting a lot of younger people, younger scholars involved in that work with the AHS. The website, the website you can download the membership form on the website. If you are not inclined to download, you can also go and fill out a membership application online. This is done by a SurveyMonkey. And we have 3 levels of membership. We have the senior citizen, the youth, and the individual membership. And we also would like to hear from you about your volunteering, and also if you want to contribute to the AAHS in terms of programming. This can be done. You can just take your cameras out and snap that QR code. It takes you directly to the site. And there's also the link there where you can fill the form out online if you don't want to download it, and also mail it to us. Jamila, it's back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Brathwaite. And now we will have a special presentation by Willie Trotman.
Hey, hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome. This is in reference to Mount Moore Cemetery.
Good evening, Willie.
So for those of you who are unaware of where Mount Moore Cemetery is, if you're leaving Spring Valley going into NAACP on Route 49, Route 45, crossover, you will see ShopRite on the right-hand side, and as you get into the NAACP, West NAACP, and the entrance for the Palisades Mall. If you take that exit onto Palisades, into the Palisades Mall, it will take you around to the left. Come all the way around to the left and come to the traffic light. At the traffic light, make a right-hand turn, and Mount Moore Cemetery will be on the left-hand side. So Mount Moore Cemetery was kind of formed on July 7th, 1849. And that was the day when James Benson and his wife transferred some property to the town of Ramapo in the area known as West NAACP to William Moore, Stephen Samuels, and Isaac Williams, trustees of what was considered, what's called at that time, burying ground for colored people. 6 years later, in 1855, James Benson transferred to Sam Samuels, Joy Williamson, and Titus Jackson, and Thomas Thompson, the other section which today makes up Mount Moore Cemetery, cemetery known for colored people. It was then from that point, they decided to put together an organization in 1940 to take care of the cemetery. So it was chartered as the Mount Moore Cemetery Association in 1940. In 1989, a group of people from throughout the county formed a group to volunteer and clean up the cemetery. In 1988, the cemetery actually was dubbed a landmark by the town of Clarkstown. And on July 16th, 1994, New York State approved it as a historical landmark. And on August 19th, 1994, it was approved as a federal historical landmark. And in March of 2000, the Palisades Mall came into being, and at one point, the way the story is told, tried to dig up the Mount Moore Cemetery and put it on the other side of 59 in front of ShopRite, which would have been a bad sell because that area still floods today. Based on information from David Smith, who at that time met with Hezekiah Easter, who was legislator Hezekiah Easter at the time. They met with the owners of the Palisades Mall, who offered them a check, a signed check, blank check, if they would allow them to move the Mount Moore Cemetery to the other side of the street. Hezekiah staunchly refused. It's been chronicled that that is the case, that they did offer him a blank check. He refused, and thus it remains there today. What they did agree to, the owner of Pyramid, it's called, was to maintain the maintenance of the cemetery. And then they provided a fence and some other, I think, materials for the cemetery. To date, we know that there are at least 30 recognized veterans in that cemetery. Many of them, they are from Civil War, the Spanish War, And so we formed another group of associations with Bill Batson, Ed England, Gloria Gibson, Dorothy Stoops, Sandra Obi, Drusilla Consonzi, Robert Ellison, to regroup the cemetery, because the cemetery is in need of repair, badly in need of repair. And so we continue to meet with different individuals to ensure that the needs of the cemetery is addressed. There is an hour-long video. I believe you can reach out to Drusilla Consonzi or Gloria Gibson. I think that Jim Miller has a copy of it also. And it tells this story of these Black soldiers. And this guy, Bill Stump, was able to find us and go back into history and find out their history. It's significant of the history that these Black soldiers played in the formation of St. Philip's A.M.E. Zion Church in Nyack. But just the history, the bravery, and if you want to be proud of your history, go back and read the stories of these soldiers. And sometimes when people during the Civil War, especially, and when Robert E. Lee surrendered, some of those Black slaves who had turned to be soldiers stood there and witnessed that. And so it's really touching story about what people went through, what these Black soldiers went through, knowing that if they were caught by the Confederate army, they would be tortured. And so but they was willing to fight for their freedom. Significant history. We ask that you really take a look at it, stop by the cemetery. We will be continuing to work on it. If anybody is interested in working on the project, contact Gloria or Drusilla. It's fascinating history. Not only that, but people like Hezekiah Easter and Wilbur Folks when they formed the Mount Moore Cemetery, kept impeccable records till this day. So the cemetery is solid because from 1849 up until 2007, there were impeccable records about Blacks who were born in the cemetery. One of the pieces of history talks about also that somebody said, but my parents were half white. And it goes back to that thing about if you have one drop of Black blood, then you're considered Black. And so if you have one drop of Black blood, you were buried in that cemetery. And it goes back into the Gullah Fields of Nyack, the Cisco's of Nyack. Very significant history. If you get an opportunity, please stop by or reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Willie. This is fascinating history. I've visited Mount Moore on several occasions. If you go to our museum site, and I think that Les can place that link in the chat for you, you can see photos and some names and a narrative about Mount Moore. We'll continue to do more work on that. And also, we will put a link on our site very soon for those for the documentary or the film that Willie spoke of. So here on screen is what you will see when you reach our digital exhibit, our museum that we hope to continue to grow. There's much more history in this county than anyone knows. When I first started on this project, I didn't think that it would be what it is, and it's still growing. And if you know of sites or individuals, that's how you can really help us, is by reaching out and saying, hey, my family has been here since, the 1800s, and this is what I know. Or there is a location of a church or another edifice. It's unfortunate that a lot of our historical sites are lost. And that's just not in Rockland County. that's all over this country. And this is work that we all have to do together, is identify places of historic value and then work to try to save them and to make sure that there's some information that's there, like at Mount Moore Cemetery, that tells you about why this is important. I don't know how many of you have recognized that Mount Moore is there. It took me, I think, many months, or probably even longer, to find it myself. Driving into the Palisades Mall, never paying attention, never seeing it, but driving near the parking structure by Dick's is really where you'll find, you look over to the left and it's there. So there are more historical sites like this. There are other cemeteries that are around Rockland that were for people of color, for African Americans, and we have to work together as a community to try to save them. So thank you so much, Willie. And now with that, can you move to the next slide? Let's have our keynote speaker, Reverend Brandon McLauchlin from St. Charles A.M.E. Zion Church. We wanted to talk about the power of the vote and continuing to fight for justice and equality. Yes, we are past the 2020 election, that has passed, but as we know, the struggle is ongoing. It's not over there. While in our community, perhaps we don't have the struggles that exist in some other communities or some other states, we always have to be vigilant. And it's clear, I think, that we've learned from this election that we can be helpful to others across the country. And being aware of what's happening is very important for us all to do. And so with that, I'm going to let Reverend McLauchlin take it away.
Right. Good evening, everyone. And first of all, thank you so much for having me tonight and allowing me to share with you all. And for those of you that are on here and you can unmute yourself, please don't right this minute. Wait till afterwards if you can. But I'm certainly glad to be able to come and share in this space with you all tonight. Thank you to the African American Historical Society for having me. And there's so many other people that I'm sure are more qualified, got more years of experience and all of that, but you decided to choose little me. So I'll endeavor to do the best that I can to share with you all tonight what I feel God has led me to share with you tonight. We're talking about voting, and it's kind of different to think that we would be talking about voting now, right after we were staring at our TV screens. I don't think I had CNN on my phone. I had CNN on the TV. I was going I'd leave the house, go to the car with CNN in the car, having it playing, just trying to hear what's going on, right? We're kind of like election fatigue. But for Black people, we honestly don't have the opportunity to have that fatigue. We don't have that opportunity to sit back. Even now, as we are having this meeting, it is important that we remember that there's still more work to be done. That even after this election cycle, and for some it was exciting and for some not so much so, but there's still more work to be done. There's even still elections that are happening here in Rockland in 2021 that we need to make sure that we are making sure that people are registered to vote and that they are educated voters as well. But there's so many things, and we have to make sure We take this opportunity to talk about voting because, as Black people, as people of color, we don't have the opportunity not to, because voting, and this is kind of what I wanted to first start off with, voting is a stone for us. And I want you to understand what I mean by a stone. Voting is a stone for us. In the Bible, there is the story about when they crossed over the Jordan, and when they crossed, they were told to take stones with them. And the stones were to be a reminder of where they've come from, who they are, who has made ways for them. And so when we are taking the time tonight to talk about voting, voting for people of color is a stone. I want you to remember this. Voting is a stone. It is our right to vote. The opportunity that we have to vote is a reminder of where we have come from, the things that we have faced, the struggles, the people that died to make sure that I can get in my car and go and vote. There were people who walked miles to vote, and now I can mail in my ballot. There really is no excuse, because voting is a stone for us as the people of color. It's a stone. It is a reminder of what God has done and what God is able to do with us. And no matter how you see it, it is a sign of what we can do as people of color. Voting is a sign. And as I'm talking to you all, the African American Historical Society of Rockland County, I want to remind you all are holders of the stones. I don't want you to miss the important responsibility that you have as the holders of the stories of our community. You hold the stories of our struggles and our triumphs. You hold the stories of our victories. You hold the stories of what we went through. And so you have an amazing and august responsibility of sharing the stones. I want y'all to catch this, that when a child turns 18 in the community of color, they shouldn't have to wonder why they should vote. As people who hold the stones, we should be already reminding them, somebody died so you can vote. Voting is a matter of life and death. And we're finding that out now as we live through a pandemic. There's some folk that wish they would have thought differently in their voting some time ago. But now we must understand that voting is a matter of life and death. And as people of color, we cannot sit back and not share the stones with our children, our children's children. We must understand the power of voting, the power that we have in voting, and the power that we have. Think about this. Why would there be such a great push for voter suppression in communities of color? Why would anybody even care if you according to them, we're a minority, we're not much, we're not the Goliath in this fight, we're the Davids in it. And so, but why would there be such a push for voter suppression and a push to silence Black voices? It's because there is the realization of what we're able to do. You think about the figureheads of the civil rights movement that were killed. It was because they were scared of a Black Messiah. They were scared of someone that would galvanize people, not only people of color, but people outside of our community. There is real power in your vote. There's real power in your voice. There is real power in the community of us as people of color. We have to understand that the voter suppression is not because we are inferior people. It is because we are people of strength. It's because we are people who are survivors. It's because we hold prophetic utterance on the inside of us, and it even moves on the outside of us when we march and when we protest and when we speak up and say that Black Lives Matter. I mean, there is power. Think about in Rockland County, you've seen there's been this galvanizing of people standing up and protesting and all over the country. And it started with some women that decided to say Black Lives Matter. They had a prophetic voice to speak that there should be justice for people of color. And so I'm just sharing, when you think about as people of color, they want to suppress us because of what we hold inside. This is strength that cannot be destroyed. And oh man, I'm going longer than I want. I need to hurry up. Listen, Pharaoh, I'm a preacher, so y'all excuse me if I'm using biblical terms. If you just walk with me. But in my text, Pharaoh has a fear of the children of Israel. And this is, as people of color, our ancestors clung to the story of Israel in the Exodus story. And so you think about Pharaoh was not scared of a group that was established and fortified. He was afraid of their potential. Goodness, I'm not preaching, but he was afraid of their potential. And that is the fear. That is why they try to suppress our vote. And we need to make sure that our young people know the power that resides in them. It is by us telling our story. They need to know their story. There is power in having a historical society. You hold the stones. You hold the stones of power. You hold the story of our people. And we must share it. All right. Okay. I gotta finish this thing. And so not only do you hold those stones in that power, but then you hold elected officials accountable. They work for you after you voted for them and they're in office. They are supposed to bring they're supposed to advocate for your interests, your best interests. They're supposed to stand at the table, sit at the table for you and for your community and the things that you are suffering through. And we must make sure that we hold them accountable. And if they don't do what they said they would do, then we don't vote for them. I don't care if they your cousin, your uncle, your mama and auntie and them. I refuse to support people that will not support what is going on in our communities. And we need to make sure that we message. This is why you need to know how to contact your elected officials. You need to know who they are, where you are situated. Right? Who is your elected official? Who do you contact when you're going through something in your village or in your little hamlet? I'm in a hamlet. Who do you contact? Who do you let know? And you voice your displeasure on what is being done in your community. Where do you go? You need to know who your elected officials are, and you need to contact them. You need to bombard them with your complaints. They are working for you. And let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. When you go to a restaurant, I'm a foodie. My church knows this, so they know that I couldn't get through this without talking about food. When you go to a restaurant, if you tell them don't put mushrooms on your sandwich or on your pizza or anything like that, and they put mushrooms on it, you're going to say what? I don't eat mushrooms. Take this back. I need you to take it back. This is not what so if you are willing to get what you want in the restaurant, get what you want in your community. Don't be willing to settle for less than what we should receive as people of color. Oh my, don't be willing to settle. If our ancestors were willing to settle for less than who they were, we wouldn't be on Zoom today. We'd be somewhere working in the field. But because they were not willing to settle for less, I come from the A.M.E. Zion Church. And thank God for those of you from St. Charles that love you so much. It's so glad to have you on and share with us tonight. I come from the A.M.E. Zion Church. We were known as the Freedom Church, the abolitionist movement. We would not settle for anything less than rights that were equal to others. We would not settle. And I represent those people. That blood is in me to not settle. How could slaves that worked in fields know that they should not settle? And we have all of this technology and all this stuff and will settle. The slaves couldn't even read, but they knew they should be treated better than they were. And so we cannot settle for anything less. We must hold officials accountable. Lastly, and I'm done, I hope y'all still walking with me. So you must remember the stones. Voting is a stone for us. We've got to remember that this was not something that was just given. This was a Jordan for us. This was our Red Sea. This was our deliverance out of Egypt. This was not just something that happened. This was a working of God and man together to cause us to be able to have the right to vote. All right, I want you. And so it's a stone that we remind our children and our children's children that when they turn 18, or even before they turn 18 and they have the right to register, they already know why they're going to vote. Amen. And then we must hold our officials accountable, our elected officials. They must be held accountable when they're in meetings and in budget meetings and in different things. They need to have you on their mind. Matter of fact, they need to have you right there in the front of their memory. All right, y'all hear me? Right there in the front of their mind. They need to have you right there. Okay. And then the last thing that I want you to think about is that as we're moving forward, we're talking about power, we're talking about moving forward in justice and equality. That means that we need to restore recovery of our community, recovery of community. Recovery of sacredness, sacred spaces, if I can put it that way. When you think about it, there are so many in our community that have their backs against the walls. I can even think about the things that are going on around. There's people who have their backs against the wall. There's high anxiety. There is depression. There's so many things. And just being Black in itself comes with a Charlemagne the God. He says he has a chapter in his book. He calls it Blackanoid, where you Black and paranoid, play on words, where he says that we have a PTSD because of slavery, because of all of the treatment that has gone on with us as people of color. And so we need to make sure that the people, all of us as people of color, we need to make sure that we are restoring our community. The sacred spaces are not just our religious institutions. Our mosque is our church, our church, and these things. Those are not the only sacred spaces in the world. No, God is not squirmish. That's what Renita Weems would say. He's not squirmish. He gets involved in the ordinary places and the ordinary conversations of our lives. And so what I mean by restoring the community and restoring sacred spaces is our community together. There is too much division in the community of color. There's too much division. And if I'm a pastor, so I know that if I try to change carpet in a church, I might have some trouble. Oh God, okay, all right. I might have some trouble because people, or even just change something, because people love their sacred space. Well, if we will fight so hard for our sacred spaces, building wise, why is it that we won't fight for the sacred spaces people wise? We all hold in us, we all are carriers of God. God, it lives in us. All of us carry a breath that was breathed into us. Divine breath, in my sense, divine breath that we carry with us that makes you a sacred space. And the person that is in the neighborhood who needs help, they are a sacred space. The person who doesn't know how they're going to pay their bills is a sacred space. The person who doesn't know if they should, how to have health care, they're a sacred space. Those that are trying to figure out how they're going to take care of their children and work on their job, and while they're in this pandemic, they are a sacred space. And if we'll fight for our sacred buildings, then we must fight for God's sacred people. All right. You must put every effort in with all that you have to vote, and not only to vote, but faith without works, we said, is dead. That's in our tradition as Christians. Faith was my tradition as Christian. Faith without works is dead. That if you vote and then don't do nothing afterwards, then it's mute. You still have work to do. You still have to keep people accountable. You still have to work in community, and we must restore community bonds, and we must open up our community to others who want to partner with us. It makes no sense that oppressed people can't work with oppressed people. All right, y'all missed it. It makes no sense when oppressed people don't work with oppressed people. We know there are ties that bind us together, and we must work together as community to be able to keep justice and equality, not only in Rockland, but in every place that we tread. That is all I have for you all tonight. I hope that I said something that will stick with you and encourage you in your work for justice and equality, for social justice and equality.
Thank you so much, Reverend McLauchlin. And that was a fantastic address. And I'm hoping that you will stick with us for a few minutes, and Willie Trotman as well. And at this point, we want to open up for a bit of conversation, questions, what have you. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. I'm also taking I have the chat open where I can see that. So if you want to, you have a point or a question that you want to ask, now is the time. So I'm going to get started with a question and a couple of things that really stuck out for me. And in your last, well, there was a lot of things, but one point when you said that, you know, there's too much division in our community, and that communities of color need to try to work together, and that has always been, I think, the dream, that we would like to, you know, work with our indigenous communities, work with our Latinx or Hispanic communities. And it just seems to be such a hard thing to do. And I'm not suggesting that you have all the answers here, but what do you think that we need to do to try to do this in a better way than we're doing right now?
So, I don't have all the answers, but I'll try to give just my thoughts. One of the issues, let me charge my computer before I die. One of the issues that we have is that, just like with going to the doctor and therapy and different things of the nature, we wait till crisis. And it's hard to form bonds with people if you're only forming bonds with them during a crisis. And so I think that if we're going to be able to work together as communities of color, we need to form real relationships with one another. And that's what I mean by sacred, connections, sacred, those spaces between you and somebody else being sacred relationships. We need to take opportunity to fellowship with one another. Privileged, underprivileged need to fellowship together. And during times when it's not crisis, if we always wait till crisis, it's hard to make crucial decisions when you're in a crisis. And I think that we have to just try to find time to figure out how to come together in fellowship that doesn't include me trying to get up with you in the middle of a crisis.
Thank you. Willie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Reverend McLauchlin hit the nail on the head, in that we don't understand why we should vote, who we vote for, and what we are voting, when we are voting. That's insignificant. You need to understand why we need to vote. And he referenced the three young men that died, just trying to register people to vote. From Medgar Evers, all of those women that walked for a year and a half. That's why, because what we have, and there are people who say, I worked my butt off to get what I got, but you would not have had the opportunity if those people had not made those sacrifices. Martin Luther King didn't dedicate his life, he sacrificed his life so that we would have these opportunities. And so, not only that, even if you go back to Mount Moore and those soldiers who did what they did, and just so that we could have an opportunity, or they could have an opportunity for freedom, that's so very, very important. We just need to understand and appreciate our history and where we came from, so that we can know where we need to go to. So, Pastor, awesome job.
Thank you, Willie. What would you both say would be some of the steps that the community should take to move forward? I mean, this has been an incredibly difficult year. And there were probably things that, for me personally, were in my head that I wanted to do, I wanted to be a part of, but then there was this pandemic. And we know that we're not going to be in that situation for the rest of our lives. But sometimes it's hard to try to figure out, as you're struggling, just trying to make it through day after day, how to get started. What can we do as a community to try, and as you said, Reverend McLauchlin, to hold our elected officials accountable, to be more aware and to go beyond just casting our vote. And this is for both of you, so jump in where we feel comfortable.
Well, I have to always have the pastor go first.
Oh no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I think it's important. What can we do? I think that I remember I was talking to this young man, and he said, I enjoy what you do. Thanks for what you do. I don't have the courage to do it. And I'll be like, well, what make you think I got the courage to do it? And I think that's important. I think we stand on the sideline. People want to stand on the sideline and watch. I mean, one of the saddest things is that in our fight here in East Ramapo, where these two law firms came and did work for us pro bono, I think the judge said they did $7 million pro bono work for this case, just so that we can get some people on the school board for people so they can stand up for the public school students. We can't find people to run. That's ridiculous. I think 16 years ago, I was moving to Florida. I didn't get there yet. Just fighting. It's we need to stand up. I mean, look where we are now. I mean, I don't care where you stand politically. Look what Donald Trump did to us. That's not political. That's civil rights. That's not politics. That's civil rights. And I categorize it as civil rights. What's happening in East Ramapo is civil rights. And we should not, as a people, stand by and allow students not to get education since March. It's just a matter, if you want to hide and make a phone call through your phone, that's fine. But understand that 94% of those kids, these kids here, are kids of color. And then that means that they're not going to get educated. And that means they're going to end up in jail. It means the gangs are going to get them. We are standing by, idly by, and allowing this to happen. That's what we need to do. We're not asking you to physically do anything. Make a phone call. Say, make this happen. You know, call the governor, call somebody. I shouldn't have to do that. You know, people from the NAACP shouldn't have to do that. That should be ordinary, everyday people. That's my spiel.
Thank you, Willie.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. You know, my first thought is that we need to make phone calls. You have to, if you never contact them, they'll just keep going about their regular day and won't think twice about what your community is facing. And so we have to make sure that we are, I mean, as far as moving forward, the first thing to hold them accountable is to contact them, meet them, know who they are, right? And then the other thing about it is education, is voter education. Is making sure that I saw one of the questions was how do we get people to vote for more than national events? They need to know how this trickles down and how it trickled down and affects them. If you know, when I was growing up, you know, I mean, I didn't pay attention to how you know, the Senate or you know, representatives affected me. I only knew you voted for the president. That's all I didn't get it. But as you get older, you understand how those things affect you and then how it trickles down. And so we have to have voter education. We have to educate people on how these local votes affect them. And then as far as the school board is concerned, how it affects the children. You're looking at, again, like Mr. Trotman said, East Ramapo is made up of children of color. The public population of students is made up of children of color. And so they are certainly in need of our support. And one of the things that I've done when I saw that there was something that wasn't right over there, I've made phone calls to the people who I know can make phone calls to the people who I know need to get a phone call. and so if you see something, you know, I know how my church can contact me. I don't know, you know, your different thing, but find somebody that you know you can say, hey, I'm seeing this and this is not right. You know, and then they can give you some, you know, further steps. And I'm sure NAACP may have something that you can use. I'm not exactly sure all the things that you all have, but they may have things you can use. I know I've gotten letters from folk that are already kind of mapped out that I can write in my own information and then send, right? There's different ways that things can be done. But the first aspect of it is that we need to make communication.
Thank you. Willie, how can we learn more about our voter education and our local races and get more involved? I think, I don't want to say for the first time, but really this year I began to understand how important local elections can be, because those are people who are making decisions about how you vote, when you vote. What do you need to even cast your vote? Who gets purged from a voter roll or what have you? So does the NAACP have voter education information that we can use? But how do we get started with this?
We do have voter education information. We'll be sending out some. It's sad that we have to reach out to New York, or New York Civil Liberties Union has to reach out to us for assistance when we have people right here that won't reach out. I think it's important. I also think it's important in terms of education, what happened here now in this district to us and our kids. Remember, people call it politics. When it affects our kids, when it affects me, I call it civil rights. So when our local assemblyman got defeated in this last election, that has a significant bearing on our kids of color.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Because before, the assembly person was putting in legislation for a monitor with veto power. All right. That's pretty much defeated now. So who the heck is going to win this battle if we don't have a monitor with veto power? So they don't have representation at this point. And we allow that to happen to our kids, you know, and that's wrong. That's not politicians. That's not my mother and my father. That's me. That's you. And we can't blame anybody else but us. We allowed it to happen. And so we need, when we talk about voting, that's why we need to vote. That's important. His church is in Spark Hill. Pastor McLauchlin called me, Brother Trotman. What can I do? What can my church do? You know, what can we do here? We fail. We're failing our kids. They're not failing us. We are failing them. Okay? Martin didn't fail. Martin got us where we are. There are no more Martins. We are Martin now. And unless we do something, it's all over. We are. You know, you can't call somebody else and ask them to do. You have to do. You got yours simply because somebody else died and sacrificed. We're not asking you to die and sacrifice. We're just asking you to make a phone call, make a dot somewhere to vote. That's all we're asking for. Ask your neighbor to vote. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking you to go out and protest any of that stuff. Make a phone call. That's all. Join the rest of us. That's it for me.
Jamila, can I ask the question?
Most
I have,
certainly.
yes.
I wanted
Go
to
ahead.
know, you know, the church is the cornerstone of civil rights. Where are you going to find a greater number of people of color at any given time than through the churches? So my question is, collectively, what are the Black churches, or am I just don't know if collectively the Black churches are getting together and trying to continue on with the struggle? I just feel that it's through the church that many people can be reached. And if they have some sort of organization amongst themselves, I think that, you know, we don't need to be this church over here does this and this church does that. What collectively, how can we get together? Or is there any kind of group that or organization between the churches to try to get you know, more reform, to make people know what's going on? I hope I'm making myself clear, that I'm not, you know, rambling, but the point is that is there something going on with the Black churches that getting together to further our cause?
I can't say there is anything going on necessarily as a group with the Black churches. When we started getting accused of being anti-Semitic, the NAACP, we formed a group called Clergy for Social Justice. In essence, Reverend Merriweather, Reverend McLauchlin, Reverend Washington, all these guys came in to join the group. I think we meet next week, I believe. But as far as some of the other churches, no. And it's a great group. I mean, there are Muslims there, there are Jewish people, you know, rabbis there. Yeah, does that need to happen? Yes, I think it needs to happen. I think the Black church needs to stand up for itself. Historically, it has been the A.M.E. Zion Church, based on my research, who's always been in that area of civic engagement. But yeah, I mean, there's the Ministers Alliance, but you know, I'm not aware of them doing anything in that particular arena. It needs to happen though. But you're correct, it's a captive audience.
So,
I have a question.
Well, let Reverend,
well, I will say that you know, and I've worked with the Clergy for Social Justice. As far as the Black church coming together in Rockland, I'm not sure if that happened before I got here, and I have not necessarily seen it since, as far as a collective coming together for as far as civil rights is concerned. But I do think when you, as far as the Black church, and you say a captive audience, part of the responsibility for me as a pastor of people of color is to empower you to the point where you make those changes in society wherever you are. Especially since our church is in Spark Hill, which is, you know, a little bit secluded from where many people of color live. And my responsibility is to prepare the congregation to speak prophetically to you all, and to hope that in that sense, it will inspire you to go out as long with myself to do prophetic work for justice. But I can't necessarily speak for the other churches as far as us coming together.
Okay, do we have any other? I think we had one more question.
And there was something in there, in a comment in chat, and that's very true. There are some churches that don't have a social justice component, and so getting them to come along, I don't want, you know, some people just don't have that theology.
Was there another question?
Yes,
or comment?
I have a question. Yeah, my question is, in as much as we are no longer having segregation, but there are certain areas of Rockland that at school, kids, our kids, you know, most of them come home sometimes upset about how they were treated at school. But because you can't pinpoint exactly what's going on, and how do we go about that? You know, do we, you know, because when you call this school, they always have an answer to what happened. But there are certain things that you can see clearly that they're trying to, you know, like show some differences between kids of, you know, our color and their color.
Well, I think that you made the earlier statement that segregation. So Rockland County is one of the most diverse counties in New York State, but yet Rockland County is one of the most segregated in New York State, if not the most segregated county in New York State. That's very, very important to understand that in East Ramapo, while 94% of those students are students of color, then in Pearl River, 98% all white. That's segregation any way you look at it. And so, and pretty much treat it like that, you know? But again, we have to stand up. I think Reverend McLauchlin, Pastor McLauchlin, invited me to Piermont. I didn't know what to expect for a rally and to speak. What I found in Piermont was almost shocking to us, was that little white kids were walking around with signs that said Black Lives Matter. Now, I was wondering what Reverend McLauchlin had got me into. The interesting thing was maybe 25 of us out of the 500 people were people of color. But I think that we have to, and our kids have to address, Black people can't do this alone. We didn't get into this alone. We can't get out of it alone. We have to have allies, and we have to reach out to those allies for assistance. And so we need to do that. We need to find our white allies and band together with them. You know, what made the Black Lives Movement so wonderful this year was that, you know, young black kids and white kids came together, you know, and that's very, very important to happen, So we need allies. We need to join together, but we also need to be enjoined from other people. I think we just have to reach out to those individuals. I think that's why I take so much pride in the Clergy for Social Justice, is that it is very, very diverse. And I think that we have to do that. Somebody has to go to bed tonight and get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, what do I need to do to help today? You know, if make a phone call, write a letter, but you have to do something. I mean, and my cliche is, you know, life is a gift, but the gift that you're given wasn't yours to keep. It's just a gift. It was meant for you to share with somebody else. And my cliche is, if you don't share it with anybody else, nobody ever know you had it. And so that's why I think we are faltering here in Rockland County. The Native American, same thing, you know, almost eliminated. Now you got this group of Black kids. They're almost eliminated. Think about it. And what I say to people is, again, if we don't educate them, they're gonna rob you tomorrow. You got it, but they're gonna rob you. And if you think you're safe in Spark Hill, if you think you're safe in Stony Point, you're not safe. And, you know, these kids deserve a right to get an education. Okay? Not just because of the color of their skin. They bleed red blood. They deserve a right. And so all of those people who fight with us now, who stand shoulder to shoulder with me, I appreciate you. But understand, it's a lonesome road out there. So often you look behind you and the only thing you see is your shadow. You shouldn't have to see your shadow. You should see lots and lots of people walking behind you. So.
So
Thank you.
we're reaching our almost we're at 8:30, and so we want to wrap up now. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I think that if there was a chat in a question in the chat, and I think that Willie Trotman really answered it partially. And maybe in your final thoughts before we go, one of the questions was from an individual that I really respect and respect his work, Professor David Lucander, who's at Rockland Community College. And he asked, what advice would you give to young white kids who are infuriated with racism and want to make a difference, but live in predominantly white spaces, as you just spoke about? There's a lot of energy from teens and from teens and those in their early 20s out there. Do you have any wisdom or insight?
Yeah, I think number one, I think you've made step number one. So each semester, Dr. Lucando invites me over to speak to his African American class. I think that's number one. I think we make the attempt to educate the kids, the white kids, about history also. I think it's just important to educate them about history, because when you start telling white kids about what happened, when you start telling them about slavery and all of this, you could see a complete different change. That's why when you saw all of those young kids during the Black Lives Movement during the past few months, they were able to walk together because they understood that, you know what, we're equal, we are friends. You know, the one great thing that happened to, if you remember, when they had to walk out, the basketball players, the white players and the Black players walked out together because then they understood. So, you know, one of the running criticisms I have for East Ramapo is that they don't have Black studies. You know, they don't have Black and Latino studies. So kids don't have the opportunity to learn about their history, whether they're Black kids or white kids. And that's something that we need to address in Rockland County. If you learn about your history, then you can understand. So I think if we make a conscious effort to educate the kids about the history of America, because everybody thinks that America is this wonderful country. America is not a wonderful country. America took Black people and made them as slaves and put them on plantations. They took Native American people, right, and put them on reservations. All right. So America isn't so wonderful. So what do we do to change the image of America? I don't see America as wonderful. America sent me to a war that I didn't know anything about, brought me back home, and I didn't even have a job when I got back. America isn't wonderful. All right. It might be, it gives you opportunities, but the opportunities still are not equal. It's not equal for women. It's not equal for women, people of color. So I think we need to educate those young white kids as well as the Black kids to say, you know what, in this world, you're equal. If a country attacks us, then we're all equal. They don't attack white people. They don't attack Black people. They attack everybody. And I think if we can pass that on to the young kids, and again, why it's so important for them to vote, and I'm talking about white kids also. If they understand that history, I think we become a better country.
Thank you, Willie and Pastor.
So I think for that question, it starts with like I said earlier, about having meaningful fellowships together and interactions together, to really have an understanding and to get educated of the things that we go through as people of color. Also, when I think about our church, one of the things that we were trying to do with our educational committee, and we're still working on it, was that we saw that there's a need in South Orangetown School District for there to be representation of people of color. There's not many people of color that are teaching in that area. And so if you think about it, if you have no interaction with Black people, and these are the kids that are going to become police officers and politicians, all that, if they've had no interaction with people of color, then all of a sudden they see your son at a traffic stop. They've had no interaction with people of color. They don't know how to even see you as a person. And so, I think that those those people, young white children that want to see change, start in these schools. Help us get curriculum in these schools and teachers of color in these schools. It makes no sense. I'm not exactly sure of the number of teachers of color that are in South Orangetown, but it is very, very minute. It is a small number. And so I think that is less than 5. All right. Thank you, Sister Lawana. So, you're talking about they have no interaction whatsoever. And then they're in this social bubble. They come in contact with no people of color. And then all of a sudden they get in contact with people of color policing them, right? They don't see them as people. And so that is, for me, I think that's part of it. Helping us to get this in education, and then being willing to walk with us and not, I've had some people who were not of color contact me during this summer. That's how I got to Piermont to speak. They contacted me. I would have never done anything in Piermont. It wasn't in my mind to do it. Mr. Trotman said I didn't think to do a rally in Piermont, but we had people who took the steps that I would not. The person who did it, she was neighbor with the mayor, was able to get things moving quicker than I would have been able to. And so I think that those are healthy partnerships. We just have to have those. And I think that there was another comment that said safe spaces for us to come together and have conversation, including young children. And I think that's what I was talking about earlier, creating this sacred space together with one another to have these conversations. I think that's the best thing we can do. And that's it for me. God bless y'all.
Thank you so much, Willie Trotman and Pastor Brandon McLauchlin from St. Charles A.M.E. Zion Church. So pleased to have you here with us. So thank you, everyone, for being here. We need to do this more. This is a safe space. This is one of those safe spaces. It doesn't have to be a physical gathering. And I hope that you will work with us to do more of this. We need more hands in this work. We can't do it by ourselves. We can't gather all the history. We can't present all the history. We can't have all the public programming alone. We need you to join us and be a part of this. Appreciate you being here. So with that said, I'm going to say good evening to you all and thank you to our speakers and thank you for coming together at this time. Please be safe and stay healthy and well. Continue to wear those masks and stay healthy. And when it's time for the vaccine, I think we should all run out and go get it so we can get back to life the way it was before. I can't wait to see you all in person. So with that,
Thank you, Jamila.
Thank you.
Thanks for keeping it going.
All righty. Take care, everyone.
Happy
Good night.
holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays. Happy
Yes, ditto.
holidays.
Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Good night. Stay safe.
Take care.
Night, safe.
Be blessed.
Night.